Now joining a group that aims to stop men falling through the cracks of conventional society and into a life of crime.
My name is Blundell and I'm a trustee of a Band of Brothers. Band of Brothers is a national charity that helps young men involved in the criminal justice system, or they are at risk of joining the criminal justice system. People with addiction issues, people who are in care, people struggling with their mental health, and things like that. Young men in society face a lot of challenges, and I think one of those is the lack of kind of role models. And there's a lot of anger, and people don't really know how to deal with that anger, and that gets them into trouble. I was born on a council estate in Northampton. My mother was English, and my father was Pakistani. There was a lot of problems for me growing up around racism and abuse of varying kinds. And I developed ADHD and became quite disruptive. And eventually I was excluded from school permanently. And I went to a pupil referral unit. I was told I wouldn't amount to anything. I left school at 16 with no GCSEs, no qualifications at all. And I had real low self-esteem, nothing going for me. The people around me in my teenage years were getting up to no good and involved in crime, and they would invite me to do the same. But I resisted them. For me, what was fortunate was that I got involved in mixed martial arts, and that kind of gave me a new lease of life. You know, I was treated with respect, and I was actually taught and coached and believed in as well. I won titles, got to travel the world, and eventually that led me to think about what I want with my life. I went to the University of Warwick, and then for my PhD, I applied immediately to Oxford. I felt like, wow, young people excluded from school shouldn't be written off. We can do this. So one day I was online and I saw an advert for a trustee position for something called a Band of Brothers. And I looked at what they were doing and I thought, wow, young boys need this mentorship because society doesn't have this understanding. They look at the behavior and they want to punish them. Whereas here was an organization that was compassionate, that was having a look at these young men, understanding where they were coming from and help them move forward without judgment. And I just thought that was amazing. What happens is a young person will have 12 weeks of mentoring. After that, we'll have discussions. We check in with each other, see how things are doing. It's our belief, and it's my belief, that every young man has the ability to do great and amazing things. And when we mentor them, we do not try to fix them. We facilitate men and make discoveries about themselves. So we're just there to gently guide and ask questions.
I've been part of a Band of Brothers now for 2.5 years. I was a drug addict from a young age. It started off with alcohol, and then it got into ecstasy tablets, then it was cocaine. I've not been convicted of any crimes, but at that point in my life, I had to make a decision. If I carried on down that path, I was going to either end up in prison or I was going to end up dead. So part of what we do, aside from mentoring, we have what's called the rites of passage. And we do some inner healing work. We get in touch with healthy masculinity. And wow, that really, really opened up some parts to me and held a mirror up to parts of me that I thought I'd fixed, but I'd not done.
I've been in and out of jail throughout my life. One night, high on drugs, I crashed on the M1 motorway and ended up in a coma for 6 months. And that was a turning point for me in my life. I came as the person needing the help. I came out the other end of Band of Brothers feeling whole and 100%. And I just wanted to give back. Eventually, that led me up to mentoring young men in prisons as well. There's no better feeling than seeing someone turn their life around, seeing that glow in their face after it's been dark. It's the best feeling in the world.
I've got no convictions. The reason why I joined the Band of Brothers is to become stronger emotionally, physically and mentally. I had a mentor for 12 weeks and he's helped me progress phenomenally, really. They all have here. You know, we're all all in it together. We all help each other.
Yeah, when I hear that people have had a real life-changing experience through Band of Brothers, it just makes me feel proud to be part of Band of Brothers, because I just know that that will benefit so many other people around them, whether that's their children, their partners, friends and family, their community, or other young men that they then go on to mentor. I just feel really positive about it.
It's just such a great project. And Tia from Band of Brothers joins us now. Tia, you spoke there about how you were expelled at the age of 11. You're currently studying at Oxford, which is your third university. You've done incredibly well. How's the opportunity at university come about?
Well, it was a long and difficult road, particularly after, leaving and not having a lot of confidence in my academic ability. But really, it was the martial arts that got that back for me. There was an underlying expectation in the gym that, if you worked hard, you can make it to the UFC. And that is really the Oxford University of the martial arts world. And so it really built my confidence. But to fund my career, I went to work on the doors as a bouncer. And I got to work a lot of student nights, and I spoke to students, and I thought, well, I can have intellectual conversations with these guys. And, they felt like they had the world at their feet. And I thought, well, that was me once. So I thought it would be nice to kind of reclaim that. So then I moved to apply to go to college. And actually, I was initially rejected. And it was a real hard moment, because it really brought back those feelings of exclusion and those feelings of low self-worth and lack of belief in myself. But, what got me out kind of got me back in, impulsivity. I put a suit on and just went straight to the college, found who was in charge, had a chat with her, and she gave me an unconditional offer.
That's fantastic. So actually your ADHD, which you open about, actually ended up being your superpower, because that was the impulsivity where you thought, you know what, I'll put a suit on, I'm just going to go for this. And you got an unconditional offer. Yeah,
absolutely. and I've harnessed that a lot in my academic time at university, and it's been a blessing, really.
Clearly. But your personal experience, I know it's inspired you to tackle this problem of exclusion in schools, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I've set up a not-for-profit organisation called Excluded from School, and I'm really keen to collect lived experience to help make some change. I mean, for me, it was really deeply troubling. I mean, what led me to a Band of Brothers and gave me success was the kind of mental health issues I had around that. And you can see here that, the last data, there's 9,376 exclusions per year. And we know that in prisons, around 42% of the prison population were permanently excluded from school. So another way to look at that figure is that we are pushing 4,000 young people forward into prisons. And last we heard, there was only 500 spaces left. So something clearly needs to be done.
When you describe it like that, it's really clear, isn't it? Yeah, when you see those numbers, well over 9,000 this year. And it's a lot of people potentially going to prison unless something happens there. And you think that there's a certain groups of people are more likely to find themselves excluded?
Yeah, absolutely. So according to government data, the number one reason for permanent exclusion is persistent disruptive behaviour, which another way of looking at is ADHD. So that's what I had, and that was what led me to permanent exclusion. And another thing is I'm very fortunate to speak to lots of parents. And I spoke to a mother recently whose son receives behaviour points at the beginning of the day. And because he's got ADHD, which is diagnosed and known to staff, if he stands up out of his chair, he loses those behaviour points, and then that can lead to detention, suspensions, and did lead to permanent exclusion. I mean, up and down the country, people are using stand-up desks and treadmills under desks. But for children, it's somehow unacceptable. Another mother had a young girl who had similar issues, and because of her ADHD manifesting in classes, she was put into isolation, and that led to suicidal ideation. She's had to be taken out of school and homeschooled. So the problem is that this is neurodiversity, and it starts just like that. There's nothing sinister underneath. But when we exclude them and they go to things like alternative provision, which is really a lottery, there's no kind of unified way alternative provision is done in this country. And sometimes it's just warehousing kids. And what happens is in those spaces, they can get exploited. And as they've been excluded, they feel countercultural. They feel like, well, this system isn't going to work for me. So they get involved in criminality because those people actually give them respect, and they think, well, this is a way to make money and actually make something of myself. And that's where we start to see the prison pipeline and young offenders and prison. And it starts as ADHD, which could be looked at and could be supported, and it ends in criminality.
Yeah, it can spiral very, very quickly. One of the things you touched on earlier, you were saying about the MMA, the mixed martial arts that you started doing. And I'm interested to know if the fact that your instructors that were teaching you then, the fact that they were seeing something in you and seeing you excel at something really just got the best out of you? Because for once in your life, you were being told you were being really good at something rather than being constantly criticised that you may have seen at school with the behaviour that you've described.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, as I say, the expectation that you could do great things was really important. But if you were a little bit different, or you had unique skills, or you were particularly good in one area, that was actually respected by the coach and harnessed. It wasn't like you had to, no, there's only one way to do things. So that was really important. When I went to university, in my second year, a professor who's very influential in my life said to me, I think you should apply to Cambridge for a master's.
Wow.
Now, that was huge because he actually gave me something to dream of. He gave me something to lose. That's something we do at Band of Brothers. We help young people to find out what kind of man they want to be, and it gives them something to lose. You know, my dad died in my second year. And that was really hard, and I was struggling with the grief of that. It was really, really difficult because he'd only recently come back into my life. But having that expectation, having that dream, and having that goal meant that I could stay and I could keep studying, and it would have made him proud for me to have got in. And that's what I did. I went to Oxford. So young people need that. They need those role models wherever they are, whether they're in the class, at the home, in the community, in gyms, or at university, so they can actually aim at something better than going down negative paths.
Oh, beautifully said, and I'm sure they'll be incredibly proud of everything that you've achieved so far. Tia, thank you for joining us. Beautiful insight, and best of luck with Band of Brothers.
Thank you.
What an incredible story. Now, how one money laundering mogul thought he had the